Hey dudes, we're almost done with Homelands. Today we're talking about the green cards, then we only have a few colorless and land cards to discuss after that. So, let's hop right into this. Alright, we are almost done. We're on the last of the colored cards, the green cards. And we're starting off with a rare. Anhava Constable is a 2, 1 plus star creature that costs 1 and 2 green mana. Anhava Constable has toughness equal to 1 plus the total number of green creatures in play. So, we're starting off with kind of a banger. This isn't a, incredibly strong card, but it's not terrible. Note that it doesn't say other green creatures, so this buffs itself. So it is a 2-2. When you play this, it is a 2-2 for 3 mana, and then it just gets more defense for each other creature you have. That's kind of neat and almost strong. It isn't strong, right? Because it's just defense. It's not like this buffs this guy up anyway. But if you are going wide, this can survive a lot of damage-based removal and can block a lot of things. It's pretty decent. Honestly, it's a pretty strong card in Limited. This one does have the same problem I have with a lot of early designs, where it just kind of makes blocking even easier, and I don't really think that's what we need to be doing, but putting that aside, I think this is interesting, pretty cool, and fun to think about. So, I think it's pretty solid. As far as rares go, this is really fucking cool. But yeah, I don't know, I guess I don't have too much to say about this one, but I think it's pretty cool. It's a good step into the green cards, if you ask me. This was illustrated by Dan Frazier, and he did fantastic. It's really solid art. Very, very cool. It looks great. I guess I have nothing else on this one. It's a solid card. Good first step into the green cards. Alright, next we have Anhava Inn. Anhava Inn is a sorcery that costs 1 and 2 green. This is an uncommon. Gain 1 plus star life, where star is equal to the total number of green creatures in play. Yeah, okay. This one is interesting because I have positives and negatives to say about it. We'll start with the positives. As far as cards go, this is pretty interesting. I wouldn't call it powerful, but it's not, terribly weak. If you are going to build a green go-wide creature deck, this is probably more efficient than Stream of Life, which, is a bad card, so whatever. My point is that I think that this card is pretty well designed. You probably could make it 2 mana and it would be fine, but this, I don't hate seeing this one at 3 mana. My only real complaint about it is that it is basically the same mechanic as the last card we saw. That one increases its toughness based on the number of green creatures, which is a story that kind of makes sense, I suppose. This one gains you life based on the number of creatures, which can be a story that makes sense, but both of them being kind of the same thing and very similarly named, I'm not big on it, but I guess it's fine. It would be better if it was something new, but it doesn't bother me too much. Where I am kind of bothered is that this card does not make sense as a sorcery. Why are we doing a place as a sorcery? I don't know. It's just stupid to me. Why couldn't this be an enchantment, right? Or a land? You could have done a funny, cool land with this. But whatever. They're not major complaints. I don't really particularly feel strongly about this one either way. It's fine. It's a pretty useful card for kitchen table or low level play. It's not really a competitive thing, obviously, but I mean, it's kind of a fun card. I just think this set is doing a little bit too much of the star is equal to thing, and we could have gone in different directions here, but the card itself is fine, if not a little curious as to what's actually going on here. Again, it's not that big of a deal. This was illustrated by Brian Schnotty, and the art is fantastic. It's very beautiful. I like looking at it. It's very cool. I would have preferred something like this to be an enchantment or a land or some type of permanent as a structure, but whatever. It's not that big of a deal. Alright, then we have Autumn Willow, another rare. This is a 4/4 legend that costs 4 and 2 green mana. Cannot be the target of spells or effects. Pay green, target player may target Autumn Willow with spells or effects until the end of turn. This is a a pretty amazing card. It's certainly not super strong, but this is one of the better cards in this set for a few reasons. One, it's very interesting. This is the first instance of Shroud in the game, and Shroud is kind of cool. It's also really interesting that the first instance of Shroud can be removed by the player. The reason you would do that is if you wanted to attach like an Instill Energy or fucking whatever, like Howl from Beyond. It could be anything, right? If you pay the green, you can then target it and then pump it up or put enchantments on it or something like that. Or I guess equipment now. Equipment didn't exist at the time, so we won't really go into that, but this is very cool. It is expensive. I think that this reasonably should have just been 3 and 2 green mana. Put it kind of on the same level as, like, Sarah Angel. 4/4 also seems kind of weird to me. I don't know the story all that well. Maybe Autumn Willow here throws hands with the best of them, but 4/4 seems kind of big for what's going on here. Not that I'm suggesting that this card needs to be worse, because it absolutely doesn't. But I think it would be more reasonable to make it like a 1/3 or something and bring it down by like 2 mana, which would, I think, be pretty cool. I don't know. Autumn Willow is really interesting. I like this card a lot. It's pretty new design space in a lot of ways. That's really, really fucking cool. And in a world with like a bunch of Swords to Plowshares and Terrors and really efficient removal, this is pretty sweet. It's pretty easy to build around. It's kind of like, it doesn't take too long to figure out what you're supposed to do with this. It kind of leads players in a direction without holding their hand. It doesn't have any of those stupid restrictions that other cards have, saying like, you can't cast this unless it's 12:30 at night. All this other bullshit that doesn't really do anything but just make it frustrating to read. This card is fantastic. It's really interesting and very cool. I think it costs too much mana. They could have, like, made this better, and I think it would have been great. But, you know, that is what it is. None of these cards are good except for the ones that probably shouldn't be, and, you know, Magic did that a lot back then. So, anyway, this was illustrated by Margaret Organ Keene, and the art's fantastic. Anyway, next we have this common. This is Carapace. Carapace is an enchant creature that costs a green mana. Target creature gets +0/+2, and then you can sacrifice Carapace to regenerate the creature that Carapace enchants. This is pretty awesome. It's sort of like Regenerate, an enchantment that already exists, except this is cheaper. You have to sack it to use it, but you can do it for free, so pretty much as soon... It's less initial investment, but only one use. But these two things are very different, and I think both of these cards play differently enough that it's a meaningful decision which one you want to use, or if you want to use both, and they both have upsides and downsides, and I think that's really cool. I wouldn't call this just like an old idea. I mean, it is. There isn't really anything new here, but this is kind of interesting, and there is some level of... with Vidura and Enchantress at the time still being printed in like revised and 4th edition and stuff like that, there is like a reason to be running cheap green enchantments or cheap enchantments in any color that you can reasonably run with green. And Carapace is just another one that you could potentially consider, especially since this is really nice too. Like, that kind of deck really kind of depends on its Vidura and Enchantresses sticking around, and maybe their birds. So Carapace is kind of a cool idea in those decks specifically. This is really neat. It's very cool. I like this. I think this is awesome. I don't actually have anything negative to say about this. I don't think it's a like particularly strong card. I wouldn't run this in like tournament play or anything like that, but I think it's really interesting for the whole like kitchen table kind of stuff, and it just gives you more options to build a cohesive deck, which is kind of interesting. Yeah, I guess that's all I have on Carapace. Carapace was illustrated by Anson Maddock. I like this one. It's kind of interesting. We do have 2 different choices to look at here, and this is the second one. And they're both very similar, which makes sense. They were both done by the same person. But so the Carapace looks the same either way. It's just, do you want to look at a dude's back or a chick's front? I guess. I don't know. They're both fine. Pretty decent. Then we have Daughter of Autumn. Daughter of Autumn is a rare. It is a 2/4 legend that costs 2 and 2 green mana. You can pay a white mana and redirect to Daughter of Autumn 1 damage dealt to a white creature. This one is kind of interesting for a few reasons. One, this is the first legend to, at least I think this is the first legend to have two different colors, to be a single color card, and then to have a different mana colored symbol in the text box. It's not the first card to do this. This has been done since Alpha. Sedge Troll in Alpha also has this same kind of thing going on, but this is the first legend. It's kind of interesting. Beyond that, this card is really bad. This card is funny because its ability to redirect to, so you have to pay a single white mana per each instance of this, and then like you could do that, send damage from a white creature to this. That's not good. They keep doing this kind of ability. It's like this does anyone ever use this? It's just such a terrible use of your resources most of the time. And sure, there are instances and stuff, right? Like there's definitely creatures you'd be like, man, I really need this to stick around. Maybe, fine, whatever. It's really, really funny for this card to care only about white creatures while being 2 green. It feels like it's a new person trap. It feels like this is designed to trick you. And I guess it's not that big of a deal. 2 color pips of 1 color is not like that huge. And they are ally colors, right? So you do have like savannas and you have the Ice Age lands and yada yada yada. But it's still, I don't know. It's just kind of funny to me. The ability sucks. The stats are okay, I guess, for the mana cost. We've seen way fucking worse at any rate. But this is not a good card by any stretch. Maybe you can figure out some dumb combo to do with it. It's just not good. It was illustrated by Margaret Organ Keane. The art is really nice. I like that. I think it's an interesting card. It just really sucks, and it's kind of a shame that it sucks. But there's no reason for us to continue on with this for so long, so let's move on. Alright, then we have Fairy Noble. This is another rare. It is a 1/2 that costs 2 and a green. And it's a noble. All fairies you control get +0/+1. Tap. All fairies you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. Wowzers. Hell yeah. So now we have Fairy Tribe. So we can play with all of our fairies. Very funny that this is a noble. They've since errated this, as you can see. It's a fairy noble, and now it says other fairy creatures you control. Just so that this doesn't pump itself up, because, God, that would be awful. This would be way unbalanced then. Joking aside, this is kind of okay. Cards like this really depend on, like, what sort of support it has. And to be fair, they printed several fairies in this set, even at common. I don't have the same criticisms of this that I do with some of the other lords in this set. It's not particularly strong, and the fairies kind of suck in this set, but whatever. Like, that's not a big deal. I think this is cool. I think it's interesting. Anyway, this was illustrated by Susan Van Camp, and it's pretty funny. I don't particularly like this one. Her work is kind of hit and miss for me. A lot of it is really fucking funny. I do like a lot of her serious stuff. This one just isn't really doing it for me. But, you know, we all have preferences. Alright, next up is a common. This is Folk of Anhava. This is a 1/1. It costs a single green mana. If assigned as a blocker, Folk of Anhava gets +2/+0 until end of turn. This is really solid. Like, this is actually a pretty playable card, in my opinion. It's certainly not super great, and it does kind of speak to the whole blocker advantage at the time. But, like, this is a pretty threatening card, right? It doesn't, like, have flying or anything like that, but +2/+0 on a 1/1 while it's blocking means that it can take out a 3/3, which I think is pretty interesting and pretty cool. I like this card. I think it's great. I think it does kind of have, like, good lore to it, because it's like, oh yeah, they're a community. When they're in trouble, they work together. And it's just interesting. It's very cool. I don't know. I guess I don't have much else to say about it. I think this is a pretty brilliant design at the time. It's certainly not the first time they've done if assigned a blocker kind of thing, right? There's nothing really new here. And, in fact, this text is probably a little overused in this set itself, but I don't mind this version. I think this one is pretty interesting and pretty cool. Kind of, it also feels like Giant Badger, which is pretty cool, because that's a cool card. Anyway, we do have two arts to talk about. They were illustrated by Julie Barrow. This one is really awesome. I enjoy it. It's very fun and kind of wacky in such a cool and fun way. But this one is also really solid. I like this one a lot too. Just bored, hanging out, vibing. I don't know what else to say. Julie Barrow did great on both of these. I think this is an awesome card. Super cool in this set specifically. And I think these cards do a lot of heavy lifting for the lore. I mean, a lot of these cards do a lot of heavy lifting. I just think these ones are among that list. Alright, our next common is Hungry Mist. This is a 6/2 that costs 2 and 2 green mana. Holy shit. During your upkeep, pay 2 green or bury Hungry Mist. This thing is kind of fucking sick. A 6/2 for 4 mana it's kind of pretty massive at the time, and like it doesn't have, it doesn't have any abilities. It doesn't really do anything. And you do have to pay an upkeep cost of 2 green for this thing, but it's kind of interesting. I kind of appreciate this card. I wouldn't say it's obvious. I wouldn't say it's like a super strong card, but this thing probably fucks in limited. I really like this one. I like it because it's unique and interesting and kind of has a cool lore to it, while being pretty different. Like the closest card I can think of to this at this time would be like Ball Lightning, or maybe the Red Ifrit, or the Red Jinn. And neither of those cards are very similar to this. They just are both heavy offensive statted, and with a downside, right? This is not that much of a downside for the stats, which is really interesting. It's still like, dies to a fucking 2/2, right? This gets walled and doesn't even trade with like a white knight or a black knight, which is kind of fucking funny. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I really like this one. I think this one is really cool. And it feels like there's more to this set than people give it credit for. A lot of this stuff isn't like new, but this kind of is. I don't know. It's hard because I'm not sure if I'm like just being extra generous because I want people, like, I want to respect this set to some degree, and I just don't want to shit all over it. But some of these cards I kind of like. I do think most of them needed a mana cut off of them, and at the very least, half of them needed a sentence or two taken off of them to have any sort of like being able to bring any sort of joy to anyone. But Hungry Mist is pretty kick-ass. This is pretty cool. It's a card to think about, at least, in my opinion. And I think that's really important. Hungry Mist was illustrated by Heather Hudson. This one's pretty cool. But this is the one that I really like. This is just so spooky. It's very cool. I appreciate that it's green. I don't know, like, if that's super lore heavy or super fits within the color pie or whatever, but I think it's really fucking interesting, and I appreciate it. Hungry Mist is an awesome card. It's obviously not super strong, but it's probably stronger than most people give it credit for, at least within the card pool at the time. 6/2 is pretty big. And 4 mana, like, I've been bitching about paying 4 mana for a 2/2. This is like 2 2/2s, but different. The point I'm trying to make is this is pretty interesting and pretty good at the time. I like it. I think it's pretty cool. Pretty crazy to see this at common. I don't think it's wrong. It's just kind of interesting. Then we have Yovin's Ferrets. This is another common. It is a 1/1 that costs 1 green mana. It's a summon ferrets. If declared as an attacker, Joven's Ferrets get +0/+2 until end of turn. At the end of combat, tap any creatures that blocked Joven's Ferrets. Those creatures do not untap during their controller's next untap phase. Excellent. What a fucking, like, why are they doing this? This is fucking dumb. It does. Why is it? Alright. So, again, we're doing, this is interesting because they're like, alright, what if it's a declared attacker? So if it declares an attack, it gets +0/+2. Fine. I appreciate that you're, encouraging people to attack. This other bit is just kind of exhausting to track, I guess, in my opinion. I mean, I don't know. I don't hate these kind of abilities, and this is neat because it's kind of pseudo removal, and you'll never hear me complain about pseudo removal in these sets because they make limited at least slightly playable. But like, why does this have nothing to do with artifacts? It's Joven's ferret. Like, why doesn't like there's so much consideration to the lore in these cards, and they're so willing to make confusing and bad cards just to describe like the flavor they're going for, which in its own way is admirable. But then they have stuff like, okay, the two thieves have nothing to do with stealing artifacts, they just blow artifacts up, and like they're expensive and bad. And then the dude's ferret is just a stun piece. These cards don't really make any fucking sense. As far as cards go, this is kind of fine, I guess. Like, it's pretty decent because no one's gonna, like, block this in the first couple turns. It basically just reads kind of pseudo unblockable. It's unblockable until it gets annoying enough for the person, and then they probably kill it, and then the thing they killed it with is stunned for a turn. So, like, it's pretty decent as far as, you know, fucking draft chaff goes. But it just bums me out that this, like, does not, like, I don't even understand what the story they're trying to tell here is. Like, whatever the imaginative, like, oh, this is why it happens, right? I'm not sure I understand what the point there is. Yeah. I don't know. Tell me in the comments if you know what the fuck the story here is supposed to be. This card just reads weird to me, and it also reads exhausting, and, like, it's too much effort for what is effectively not that great of a card, which is kind of a lot of the experience here, at least in my opinion. There's only one artwork for this one, even though it's a common, which, okay. It was illustrated by Amy Weber. The art's really cute and fun. I like the art. I like her work. I like the little frog. The lizard there is also funny. The sitting on grass and then just a wall and just immediate desert behind, also great. Love it. Hilarious. For such a Vorthos heavy set, this just kind of bothers me, and maybe I'm picking on it too much for that, but that's the part that gets me when I look at it. Then our next common is Leaping Lizard. This is a 2/3 lizard that costs 1 and 2 green mana. You can pay 1 and a green and give it flying and -0/-1 until end of turn. Hilarious. I don't have any issues with this one. It's simple enough to understand. The story is, like, pretty funny. There's different ways to interpret the story, too, right? Because, like, the -1, you could say, like, oh, well, why it's in the air flying, it's a predictable path, right? So it's not as defensive. While it's on the ground, it can move all the directions, it has cover, and stuff like that. So you could look at it like that. Or you could also just look at it and go, huh, it hit the ground hard when it landed. Yeah, whatever, right? I like this one. I think this is neat. I think it's kind of interesting. A 2/3 for 3 mana is pretty great, and being able to give it flying and be a 2/2 for 2 mana, like, that's kind of a lot, like, for what you're getting, but not really. Pretty solid and limited, especially later in game. You can get this down and just, you know, ping them slowly, put them on a 10 turn clock or whatever. I like this. I think it's really interesting for green. I think it's kind of fun. I do like some level of flying in green. I know not everybody does, but I do like when they do it and it has a fun or interesting story. And I think this does. I think this is hilarious. This was also illustrated by Amy Weber. The art's fantastic. I love it so much. It's a great piece, in my opinion. All right, next we have another rare. This is Mammoth Harness. This is an enchant creature that costs 3 and a green. Target creature loses flying. If any creature is assigned to block the creature Mammoth Harness enchants, or has the creature Mammoth Harness enchants assigned to block it, that creature gains first strike until end of turn. This is awful. This is horrible. And this is horrible for a couple reasons. One, it doesn't fucking do anything, which kind of sucks. Like, 4 mana for a creature to lose flying? And then any creature that blocks or is blocked by it gets first strike. First off, the wording on this is confusing as fuck. It's so much cognitive load for something that does nothing. This sucks. Like, it's terrible. Why is this 4 mana? What the fuck does this do? What is the purpose of it? Why is it 4 mana? This is... I don't like this one. I don't like this one at all. This is a great example of why people do not like this fucking set. Because this is exhausting to fucking read, and then you get to the end of it, and you get kicked in the dick. Why would you ever play this? It's just bad. There's no reason for this to cost 4 mana. It's insane to me that this costs 4 mana. It's insane to me that someone thought that this would be a fun card. Like, It doesn't do anything. It's not impossibly complicated, right? Like, it's not really that complicated, but it's written in a fucking awful way. You definitely probably have to read it twice to fully understand what's going on. I guess it's not worth complaining about too hard because the card is completely unimpactful and everything. What a fucking bum rare to get. Oh, yeah, absolutely fucking miserable card. This was illustrated by Melissa A. Benson. The art is fine. I don't know what else to say about it. It's just a bad card, right? Like, this is just, it's not fun to read. It's not powerful. And cards don't have to be powerful, but it doesn't really even do anything. It doesn't, like, okay, removing flying can certainly be good, but 4 mana good? I guess maybe it's flavorful somehow. I don't know. Let's just move on. I'm not. Next, we have Primal Order. This is an enchantment. It costs 2 and 2 green mana. During each player's upkeep, Primal Order deals 1 damage to that player for each non-basic land he or she controls. Amazing. Awesome. Banger of a card. This is super cool. It's not particularly strong, and you could even argue maybe costs too much mana. Like, this is probably fine at 3 mana, but it's still very cool. The card effect and the card cost both encourage you to be playing a lot of green, which means you'll probably be playing a lot of basics, which you want to be doing if you're going to be punishing people for not playing basics. There's also an extreme amount of not basics in this environment that are pretty fucking good, right? Because you have Maze of Ith from the Dark, which I think is still mostly playable right now. That thing is fucking amazing. Strip Mine, I think they printed in 4th edition. Maybe it's 5th edition, but Strip Mine's really fucking good. You potentially still see Library of Alexandria floating around once in a while. And then obviously there's the original dual lands, which they stopped printing after revised edition, so those are harder to come by and they're still very powerful. And even like the Ice Age duels, the Pain lands, those are very good. So there's a lot of lands that people could be encouraged to play that this deals with. I think that's really good. In a limited, this is significantly less valuable, obviously. There are non-basic lands in this set, but if anyone's playing any of them, they're doing it as a challenge. But we'll get to that when we get to that. Outside, but again, the set's not designed for limited, so that's not like a huge, like, I can't believe you would do this. It helps out players with smaller collections, which I think is cool. I think that's very cool. Definitely kind of a meta consideration. It's certainly probably not a great main board deck, depending on like what you're playing against all the time, obviously. Like, if everyone you play against just plays 4 color decks, then it's fine main board, but to run this and gain any sort of benefit from it, you probably have to be a pretty aggressive strategy yourself, planning on winning through some level of damage, but you're in green, so that was probably always the plan. Overall, this is fantastic. I love it. The art is amazing. This was illustrated by Rob Alexander, and the art is really funny, really interesting, and pretty cool. I like this card. I guess I don't really have much else to say about it, but I think this card is actually elegantly designed and very cool and exciting to new players, and while it's certainly not broken, it does have a decent amount of utility and use, especially if you consider the wider card pool at the time. That being said, I have nothing else to say about it, so on to the next one. Alright, next we have Renewal. This is a common, it is a sorcery, and it costs 2 and a green. Sacrifice a land to search your library for a basic land and put it directly into play. This does not count towards your 1 land per turn limit. Reshuffle your library afterwards. Draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. Okay, so this is kind of interesting. This is the 3rd version of this kind of effect that exists. So in Legends it was Untamed Wilds. It was Untamed Wilds. Untamed Wilds costs 3 mana, and you can search for a basic land and put it into play. Pretty good. These days it's not. At the time when it was the only one, it was pretty okay. And quite honestly, it had some uses, especially as a library shuffler. In Ice Age, the set that came out before this, we got Forgotten Lore, which is 2 mana, go get a forest, put it into play. And what's interesting about the forest one is that it can go get a bayou, right? It can go get a taiga. It can go get any color as long as that color is attached to a forest, which thankfully, because of ABU and revised, we had those. You could do that. So Forgotten Lore can do some color fixing if you build properly around it. Renewal, on the other hand, is interesting because it is a slow trip, right? So this replaces itself, which is really good. That being said, it is not ramp, right? Because you have to sack a land, and so you have to sack a land to go get a basic. My point here is I don't particularly like this. I don't think this is a good card, but like it's also kind of fine. You would run this in a fast bond deck, I suppose, and it would be pretty okay there if you had like extreme color requirements. I guess this is interesting. It is kind of just like everything else, just something else that's already been done, but like worse, which is it kind of depressing. Replacing itself is very cool. 3 mana for this effect is awful, and it doesn't feel good even then. Maybe there's something you can do with this that I'm not thinking of. I don't think this is awful. Like, I'm not mad that this exists. I think it's kind of interesting and a kind of a card effect I would have liked to see more of at the time. So now that there's 3 of them, pretty cool. This one I would say is pretty clearly the worst, but it's hard to say that for sure because the card draw on this, like replacing itself, is kind of a big deal. It's not a good card, but I guess it's worth discussing and thinking about, so it has that going for it. This was illustrated by Kaya Folio. I really like the art. I'm a big Kaya fan. Said that a million times, but this is beautiful. I think it's really interesting and kind of cool. We'll move on. There's not really much to say here. Alright, so this next one is an uncommon. This is Root Spider. It is a 2/2 that costs 3 and a green. If assigned as a blocker, Root Spider gets first strike and gets +1/+0 until end of turn. Oh wow. I have nothing to say about this one. I just don't fucking care. Anyway, Root Spider was illustrated by Mike Kimball, and I like the art. I think the spider is kind of cute in a weird way, and it's pretty funny. The art's hilarious. The story is dumb, and I don't like the card. Let's move on to Roots. Man, for a set with like 100 fucking cards, not even, the naming conventions in this really needed work. Why does so many cards start with the same word? Anyway, this is Roots. Roots is an uncommon enchant creature that costs 3 and a green. Tap target creature without flying. That creature does not untap during its controller's untap phase. What the? Why is it 4 mana? Why are both, like, this is less confusing than Mammoth Harness, but it equally doesn't do much. Why are these 4 mana? This is fucking stupid. I don't know what to say about this. This is just, okay, yeah, it's incredibly restrictive removal that doesn't actually remove anything, and it costs 4 fucking mana. What are we doing here? Like, do we just not want people to, like, was the goal here to have people that bought these cards to just lose? Why are we doing this to people? This just seems rude. The art's fine. It was illustrated by Nicola Leonard. I don't particularly care about this one either. It's fine. The art's kind of interesting, I suppose, but I don't know. I'm just sick of looking at 4 mana cards that don't do fucking anything. Let's move on. Maybe the next one will be interesting. Hey, it's a Badger. Next we have Rhysorian Badger, which is pretty cool. There's not a whole lot of Badgers in the game at this point. So this rare Badger is a 2/2 that costs 2 and a green mana. Not bad. Let's see what it says. If Rhysorian Badger attacks and is not blocked, you may choose to have it deal no damage to defending player this turn. If you do so, remove from the game up to 2 target creatures from that player's graveyard. Gain 1 life for each creature removed this way. Alright, I'm taking it back. I love this. Alright, it's a little complicated, it's a little wordy, but it's not like... I didn't feel like I needed to go back and read it to understand what's going on. First off, the story is pretty funny, right? Like, it's a badger stealing corpses. Which is great. The art is super cute and goes along with that. That's pretty funny. Removing specific cards from an opponent's graveyard is actually, like, pretty good. This is a kind of card effect that has seen, like, this card hasn't seen tournament play, but there's stuff that does stuff like this has seen, like, competitive play in various card games. Admittedly, this is not super powerful, but it's a 3 mana 2/2, alright? And so, like, on its own, it's fine. Perfectly fine. I'm not a big fan of you can choose not to deal damage to have a different effect happen most of the time. but this one's kind of neat. Gaining life is kind of whatever, who gives a shit? But if you're removing creatures from the opponent's graveyard, like, that can really fuck with them, depending on, like, what they're trying to do. This is interesting. This is interesting in a fun way. It's pretty neat. It's not powerful, but at least it's funny. I like this one. I'm glad this one existed. Rysorian Badger was illustrated by Heather Hudson, and the art is amazing. Look at that. This is so fucking funny. I might be biased to this card because of the art, but I don't even fucking care. Look at this little guy. He's hilarious. More cards like this, please. Anyway, let's move on to our next common. This is Shrink. Shrink is an instant that costs a single green mana, and target creature gets -5/-0 until end of turn. Perfectly fine. I like the idea that green doesn't like to remove creatures per se, but if you combine this with a creature, you will have removed a creature via Shrink, but it required you to have a creature and to be engaging in combat. That's very green. I think that's very cool, and I think this is a pretty interesting and neat card for that. It's not particularly strong, obviously. It's also not, like, super weak. -5 is pretty good. It is, the downsides of this, obviously, are that it's a one-time use. So if you are not able to block or attack that creature, you will still prevent, you know, up to 5 damage, but just for a turn. Which might be enough, but that is like, it's not good when that's what you're using a card for, because it doesn't, like, they didn't use a card in response, it just ends up putting you behind. But Shrink is pretty cool. Shrink is pretty interesting, and I appreciate how not wordy this is. And I'm so appreciative that they didn't say target attacking creature or target blocking creature or whatever, or any other sort of dumb restriction to, like, just limit what you could do with this. This is pretty cool, and it's a simple card, and the set needed more stuff like this. This is pretty great. Shrink was illustrated by Liz Danforth, and like a lot of these cards, we have two arts for it. We have this one, which is hilarious. This is very funny. Like, yeah, Shrink. Oh no, look at you, little guy. It's funny. I like it. And this is the other one, which is also fantastic. I like that both of these have kind of different styles, or different takes on her style, rather. It's very cool, very interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I like it. Spectral Bears. Spectral Bears is an uncommon. It is a 3/3 bear for 1 and a green. Oh my god, I bet you it makes you give up a fucking kidney. If Spectral Bear is declared as an attacker and defending player controls no black cards, it does not untap during your next untap phase. Huh. Well, first off, this card is fucking sick. Holy shit. This is a 3/3 for 2 mana. And if you don't want it to get a stun counter or whatever, just don't attack with it. It's a 3/3 for 2 mana. Holy shit. This thing is legit, but I don't think this thing is overpowered, obviously, but I do think this is pretty fucking legit. If your opponent controls no black cards. First off, it's really interesting because this is not, like, nothing on this card is new text, right? Like, we have seen all of this before. Does your opponent control black cards? If it's a declared attacker, and the does not untap. Like, these are all things that this set just used liberally. But I think this one is pretty awesome. I would say it doesn't even need to be a sideboard card, right? Like, this is just, like, it's just kind of extra sauce. If they do have a black creature, then you can just aggressively attack into them, which is really cool because at the time most black decks were leveraging their life total a lot. So putting pressure on that is really nice. Forces them to use their drain lives a little bit earlier and stuff like that. This is pretty neat. Now, obviously, I don't think this is gonna stop Black Summer. Spoiler, it didn't. But this is pretty cool. I appreciate this one. I think this is really fun. But the thing I love about this most is how I've read these same fucking words so many times, and I still think this card is cool, which I think is impressive. This one is fantastic. You never hear about this card. You'd think people would point to this and be like, yeah, Homelands was kind of shit and boring, but Spectral Bears was interesting. I don't get why people don't talk about this. Maybe I'm alone and most people look at this and are not interested in it. I know, like, the whole if the defending player controls no black cards, put a stun counter on this. That's not actually what it says, but kinda. Uh, that can be a bit much, but I still think this is cool and kind of a, like, puzzle piece to figure out. You can also, like, play into that. I'm not saying it's going to be a good deck, but you could run this with fucking Deathlace, and then bam, guess what? They do have a black card. Just Deathlace one of their basics. It won't do anything but be a you know, a black card and a basic land, and then you can just truck on in, and unless they have a way to blow up their own fucking land, they can't do anything about it. So, I think this is pretty sweet. This was illustrated by Pat Lewis, and I love this. Spectral Bears is awesome. It's great. I can see some people being mad that it's a bear that's cost 1 in a green and it's not a 2/2, but, you know, shut up. Yeah, I don't know. I like this one. Let's check out the next one. Willow Fairy. Heck yeah. Alright, Willow Fairy is a common. It is a 1/2 fairy that costs 1 in a green, and it has flying. Yeah, so this is a 1/2 flyer for 2 mana, which is pretty okay. It's not super great. It's way better than the 1/2 flyer for 3 mana that I said was like, kind of okay. And this is a fairy, so if you have both of them, this is a 2/2 for 2, and with flying, which is pretty jacked. This card is perfectly fine. This literally just exists for the, like, fairy tribal support, and it's good. It's interesting. A 1/2 flyer for 2 mana is perfectly fine on its own in, like, draft and stuff like that, and if you do get the fairy support, you could maybe flood a few of these out and win, which would be pretty awesome. I don't really have anything negative or positive to say about it. It's a just basic card. It's not, like, super interesting unless you specifically think fairies are interesting, which, sure. Willow Fairy was illustrated by Susan Van Camp. This one is hysterical. Very funny. It's just a fairy sitting on a deer. I can't... He looks slightly annoyed by this, but who's to say? Anyway, this is only one of the 2 arts. I wonder if she got someone to pose for her. Oh, man. Not my vibe, but it's really fucking funny to me. Susan is so crazy, dude. Yeah, I don't know. The butterfly wings are very, very funny. Very, very funny. Holding the little acorns for scale. Funny stuff. I don't know. That's all I got. Willow Fairy is a pretty basic card. There's not much to say about it, but it is funny at least. And next is a rare. This is Willow Priestess. This is a 2/2 for 4 mana. Oh, hell yeah. Tap, take a fairy from your hand and put it directly into play as though it were just summoned. Oh, holy shit, I forgot there was 2 sneak attacks in this fucking set. There's fairy sneak attack. You never hear anyone talk about it. Just the didgery. Anyway, you can pay 2 and a green. Target green creature gains protection from black until end of turn. I mean, that's a very, very expensive rate, but, like, if you were doing pestilence stuff, that's kind of interesting. The fairy sneak attack is funny. There are, like, no good fairies, and all of them are cheaper than this, which makes it even funnier. But at least this is interesting in its own way. I like this. This is like a new thing for the most part. You don't really... Obviously, the protection from black is not a new thing. But tapping this to put a fairy from your hand into play, pretty sweet. Not particularly good. At least at the time. I mean, there's probably cracked fairies now. There might even be big fairies. I don't know. But at the time, this is interesting and feels really powerful, but the fairies kind of suck, so... It is what it is. It's a very cool idea, though. I really like this one. I keep calling it sneak attack, but it's actually show and tell, right? Because it doesn't, like, go away at the end of the turn. It just hangs out. Kind of a ballsy card to make, too. Because cards like this, like, when you do this and you're like, it doesn't matter. There's no good fairies. Like, obviously, eventually it'll be fine. But you do have to be kind of cognizant of what fairies you're going to print in the next few years, right? So, it's just kind of a risky thing to do this kind of thing. especially when it feels like the sets were not communicating, right? Like, I do not believe that the people making this had any idea what the fuck was coming out in Ice Age, or before, or Alliances after. So, like, designing cards like this is kind of ballsy when you don't even know what other cards are coming out, because it's just, yeah, I guess. It turned out to be fine, pretty sure. Uh, I guess that's all I have. This one was also illustrated by Susan Van Camp, and it's fucking hysterical. It's the sexy spirit in the back, just her hanging there with like a lynx, maybe some type of small cat, maybe a cheetah. I don't know. I don't know cats that well. Feels like a lynx, but I could be wrong. But anyways, this was the last green card, which I kind of forgot. I went through these a little quick because, yeah, I did get through these a little quick. Because a lot of these suck and are not interesting to talk about in this. Is it's getting harder to cope, right? Like, well, maybe there's better cards in the coming up, but we're getting close to the end. We only got one more section, and I think it's only like 20 cards total to talk about in the next one. So we are like almost done. So the green cards aren't that bad. I mean, they are bad competitively, but I think that goes without saying. Creatively, I really like a lot of these, and I think I had the most fun reading through the green cards. Other than a couple of minor complaints like places being sorceries and the most dog shit removal I've seen in a while, I think the green cards are pretty interesting. Autumn Willow is a straight banger, and Fairy Show and Tell is pretty funny. I wouldn't say this color fixed any of the issues I've had with the set, but I did feel like these issues were lessened in the green cards. There are some really questionable choices here, but for the most part, I really liked these cards. Still, it's too early for total conclusions, so without repeating a bunch of stuff I've said in the other color videos, there really isn't much to say here. I really liked the green cards, but I'd love to hear what you guys think, so leave a comment below if you can be fucked. As always, you can like the video if you liked it, you can subscribe if you give a shit, but either way, I hope you have a magical day. Thank you for watching.